or 4 just to fuck with him.
1, 4. Three, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Beyond the Score podcast as we took our recess break and we are ready to rock and roll. Josh, what's going on, my brother?
What's going on, man? We'll get right to the fact that we are squaring off tonight.
Oh, baby. We're going to save the most of that conversation. I want to save that till the end because as soon as we're getting off is when the game is about to tip off. But man, oh man, is that going to be something to discuss and something to watch tonight, 7 o'clock OKC Cleveland game. But football regular season, brother. We're done. We're getting into the playoffs. How do you feel? How do you feel? I mean, obviously we don't feel so great. Our Saints and Giants kind of pooped the bed. But a lot of these teams are going to be a lot of fun to watch. And
I feel like there's a lot of other things to talk about that our Saints and our Giants can wait a couple weeks now.
Well, a couple of weeks, it seems like they probably don't even really deserve much of the limelight nowadays. I mean, it's really brutal being a fan of the Giants, and it's not a fun season for the Saints as well. But playoff football, it doesn't really matter who you like. If you're a fan of football, you're going to really appreciate the teams that are here playing and how great of a football team that some of these teams are. For instance, the Vikings, the Lions, that NFC North, man, is packed out with the Packers, of course. And then you come down and you
nice. I see what you did there.
Yeah, sometimes you got to get a little creative when you're doing stuff like this. And, you go around the NFL and there's so many great teams that are remaining. What are we thinking? Who's taking it this year? I mean, obviously we had our conversations. I had my prediction prior to the season starting. I had the Lions and I had the Texans. A lot of people would think you're crazy if you pick the Texans to win the Super Bowl right now, but they're in the playoffs. They won the division, clean slate. I like to stick with that. I know that it's a long shot at this point for the Texans to make it to the Super Bowl. I'll stick with them, but if I had to pick the team that, just based on the playoffs and where I'm at and I'm watching, man, I really hope it's Josh Allen's time. I really do. I really hope it's Josh Allen's time to take one Super Bowl. I really love those Bills. I really love everything about them. And Josh Allen's a stellar quarterback. And I think he deserves it this year. But only if he goes out there and balls and the team balls and they're able to win.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment of everything going on. I mean, we got Packers, Eagles, we got Commanders, Buccaneers, a couple games that weren't touched on. And I'm going to be rocking with the Baltimore Ravens. I had them playing the 49ers, whose half their team decided to either underperform or not play, which obviously there were more things that went on than that. And you're not going to be right about everything, but it would have been nice to see the Super Bowl team at least make the playoffs. But go Ravens.
Well, I picked them to not make the playoffs, but I also picked the Seahawks to win the division, which obviously didn't happen. And the Rams came out of nowhere, and they said, hey, don't forget about us. And we were in the Super Bowl in 2021, and they made their appearance in the second half of the season. You got to give them credit. I kind of bashed Matthew Stafford a little bit now. He's the type of quarterback who's got an incredible tenure, right? I mean, what he's done in Detroit, what he's done, obviously winning a Super Bowl in 2021 with the Rams, beating those Bengals. He was able to bring out the best of his team at the end there, and it was enough for them to captivate and win that division and lock it up with teams that are very good. Like even the Cardinals, they overperformed. I mean, a lot of people think that they were a team that could have made some noise, and they were at some point. And what did they end up finishing anyways? Like 8 and 9. I mean, they were still a pretty good team in the mix till the very end. But that division, I mean, it was stronger than we thought it was, considering that, the Rams actually ended up winning the division, and then the 49ers ended up not even making the playoffs, which looks crazy. I mean, how could you say the Niners are not going to make the playoffs? Yeah. But this team, I mean, it's really tough when your best players on the offense and on the defense start crumbling at the worst times. And I think that really hurt them. And I think, histories of injury and being prone to injury is something that teams really need to consider even more than they are, because if it jeopardizes your season like this where, the 49ers, for a lot of people, they had them not only making it to the Super Bowl, but potentially winning. And they don't even make the playoffs. I mean, this is a real reality check for that organization and what they have to do going forward. For them not to make the playoffs is insane in 2024. Say the 49ers are not in there. But This is where we're at. It's still going to be a lot of fun seeing these teams battling out. It's unfortunate, but the Eagles are rocking and rolling in terms of my standpoint and things. And I do want to also say, I know that you weren't very high on them, or at least you were high on Joe Burrow like I was, and we both agree that the team was abysmal to watch outside of Burrow and Higgins and Jamar and even Trey Hendrickson. I mean, he was one of the best defensive players in football. But it sucks that Joe Burrow's not in the playoffs either. I mean, when you think about guys that could really beat the Chiefs, you think of Joe Burrow and the Bengals as being one of those teams that could.
One of the only teams.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. One of the only teams that have done it and could do it. And the way that they were rocking and rolling towards the second half of the season as well, they were 4-8, and it seemed like it's over, right? I mean, any team would rule them out. They won 5 in a row, and they go 9-8, and they just needed Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce to start, but can you really blame them for not wanting to start? I mean, obviously, considering that they had no reason to play that game anyways.
And they just played 3 games in 11 days, too, and we're very vocal about not being happy about that.
That's definitely a good point to make as well, too. I mean, I understand that, it's 3 games in 11 days. It's a lot. It's a lot of football to be played and wears on your body a lot, and they definitely could have used that break, but I think in the back of their heads, they're also like, listen, if we don't win this game, it probably would be better for us anyways. So kind of worked out for the Chiefs as it usually does. And you can never really rule them out as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if they made some run. I know they didn't have the best regular season, but they make that run, it's going to be really tough to dethrone those Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. He's definitely GOAT status in modern NFL players, and comparing to Tom Brady and all those GOATs. And I mean, you tell me, what do you think? How do you think this playoff picture is going to end up playing out? Who's going to be there? Who's playing in the Super Bowl? Is it going to be different from your preseason predictions? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, well, it has to be because I had the 49ers there, but
Oh, I didn't even. I'm sorry. You know what? As much as I was bashing anyone who took them, I forgot that you also took them.
That's all good.
as a Super Bowl team.
That's all good, but when I was just looking at see if I wrote it down, but I didn't. But I know generally the teams that I thought were going to be there. I think that it's going to be Lions Ravens at the end. I do think that the Texans are going to lose in the first round. I think that the Chargers defense is going to give them give the Texans a lot of problems, and I like the Texans, but I think just the way things are trending, the way the Chargers winning 3 straight, and I think that you look at it overall, I think that that's my upset for the week. I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans won because the Chargers, even when they win, they lose usually. Like they'll win for 3 quarters and then give it away somehow in the most Chargers fashion. But going back to the 49ers, that the only teams that let up more points than them, Titans, the Panthers, and the Cowboys. So their offense scored more points than the Chiefs. So if a lot of credit, I mean, not a lot of credit. You look at their team, and there's a lot of injuries to the offense, which kind of gives them a crutch that it makes you think of. It made me think of that. I mean, you never thought they were going to be in the playoffs, but I'm sure you at least thought of it too. But when in reality, that defense really let them down. I mean, when the Giants let up less points, when the Jets let up less points, when the Raiders let up less points. I'm just looking at this list of the bottom teams. The Saints let up less points. Like, I'm not trying to separate those teams from the Saints. The Saints didn't do their thing this year. But the Saints, I was happy that the Saints lost the last game because the bitter hatred Falcons didn't get in. I mean, they lost anyway. So
over their last 3 games, they let up 29 points to the Dolphins. They let up 40 points to the Lions, and they let up 47 points to the Cardinals. So that is definitely not the formula for success. And so that is part of the reason why that they were a failed organization this season. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt on Shanahan's ability to coach this team and bring them back to the Super Bowl. But there was a lot of moving pieces in that organization, considering that players were not there. The Brandon Ayuk scenario was definitely not one that worked out in anyone's favor. Him holding out as long as he did and then finally signing a contract, not really being in football shape, truly, because he didn't really play well when he did. And then when he is out there, he gets injured, tears his ACL, is out for the season. I mean, that's one of your – considering that you didn't have CMC from the start of the season, that was going to be your number 2 option. And he's not out there, and, you do get CMC back, but he's not even 100%, and then he goes down again and re-aggravates his injury, and it's like a whole disastrous scenario in San Francisco. Truly,
I don't like that whole thing that went down with Ayuk. I think that when McCaffrey's injury came, when Pearsall got shot, Like you look at those things that if someone cares about the team and they really want to try and be helpful to the team, they'll say, "All right, let's get a 1 year deal and then let's talk about the extension. And if we don't meet the deal, I will be testing free agency."
So who's
But
to blame? Is it the team or is it the player for not being open to the 1 year deal?
I think to an extent the player, because if the player offers that at because you can but you can also argue that for the 1 year deal you could jack it up in money a little bit, because you can argue they're not even paying Purdy $1 million, but I want to be here and I want to make this work. But right now we have a goal in mind. We want to win a Super Bowl. We want to win, and I know that the team is limping right now, and we could use a good vibe. And that, I think that that would have been something that someone who really wanted to be there would have done, and that's just the sign for me that trade him or don't pay him. I mean, you look at it in the grand scope. I'm not going to pretend I predicted he would get hurt or anything like that. And I liked him as a player before, and I don't know him personally, so you don't know if the agent how involved the agents are. They're like, "Trust me, I got this," and the player just wants to make sure they're getting the most money for their family. But when it comes to having that 1 year, I think that that shows that you want to be there. And then I think also when the team sees you do that, they might lean your way a little bit, or then you truly have every leg to stand on to say, "No, you did this to me," and but whatever. The point isn't the matter of the paying in terms of the amount of money. The point is that if he did that on a team I was running, it would have been clear that he wouldn't didn't want to be there, and I would have tried to find someone else. Maybe even with Devontae Adams moving later in the year, just try to get that move earlier to this team, because all that guy wants to do is win.
It's not a typical thing that we see that these receivers are going to take, a shorter term deal when they're able to get like that 4 year deal, like a 3 to 5 year deal, maybe. It's not, we don't see that very much happen in the NFL. I mean, throughout sports, it's not a common thing because the assurance for these players that, listen, God forbid something does happen and I do get hurt and hurts my value. Like, I need that assurance because my timeline in the NFL is not very long. Even as a
Mhm.
receiver, I mean, the truth is for you to be in your prime for as long as you possibly can, I don't think a receiver is going to last more than like 6, 7 years in their prime. I mean, with injuries. And to be honest with you, the truth is, in 2024 and 2025 now, players are more injury prone than they ever were. So they
Yeah.
want to guarantee that they're going to be able to get their bag, which I'm not saying is right or wrong because I very much like to side with the organization. I like to side with the person that's paying you, right? And if
Yeah.
they feel like they don't want to give you that guarantee of a deal, but the truth is you're one of those teams where you're right there, you're right on the cusp of like doing something really magical, then maybe you take
Yeah.
that into consideration as a player. Of course, you're going to get paid more on that 1 year deal. Let's say if you got a 4 year 120 like he got, that's $30 million a year. Maybe he gets a 1 year $40 million deal, right? Maybe with some
Yeah.
bonuses attached to it that are probably going to be hard to reach. But something like that to kind of incentivize him to say, hey, listen, we obviously want you back. We could really need you, but the commitment is obviously the problem. Let's sign a 1 year deal. And then, actually one person that did that recently was Aaron Rodgers with the Packers. Remember when there was, he was out. He was out and he was like gone. They were saying Aaron Rodgers gone. And then he said, you know what? Let's run it back for 1 more year. He ran it back with
Yeah.
the Packers for 1 more year. He had a great year. He was, I don't know if he won the MVP, but he was MVP consideration. He had a fantastic season.
Yeah.
And then it was to the point where it was like, all right, we've done what we had to do. Let's part our separate ways. And he decided to go sign with the Jets. Different scenario considering that he's a quarterback. He was 40 years old. He played 20 years for the Packers, and he won a
Yeah.
Super Bowl there. And it was a completely different way about going about it. But I'm not a huge fan of Brandon Ayuk for these types of things because I like when these things are done before the preseason. You're at
Yeah.
training camp, similar to CeeDee Lamb in the Dallas Cowboys scenario. Like, this affects the team. This affects, first of all, your potential health, right? And staying healthy because you're not practicing at the same rate as the team was because you're holding out for some sort of reason with the contracts and things like that. So whatever it is, how about this? Whatever your situation is, you still show up to practice. You want to show that team like, hey, listen, I might not be getting paid. Listen, these guys are multi-millions of dollars. I might not be getting paid, but I want to show up because I want to show that I'm still here to commit for this team until I get a contract. Now, that's one of those scenarios where it's like, well, how does that play out if you can't come up with a deal with that team? and another team might want you, and you're practicing with the team that you're trying to make a deal happen. Well, that just
Yeah.
goes to show you to the team that you are currently playing for and you want to re-sign with. Like, listen, like, I am the guy you want. I'm here. I'm playing for free right now, practicing with the team. Like, pay me. Like, let's get something done. I think that's a great way
Yeah.
about taking about it. These guys are getting paid already millions of dollars, and I don't want to hear any love lost in terms of teams because they're being stingy. Like, this is a money-making thing, right? These NFL owners are here for business as well. It's not just pleasure. So they have to be very smart about where they're putting their money and their assets in order to make their teams the best possible team out there. There's a lot of things to mix up with. And, at the end of the day, the Niners were going to take this offseason where they don't have that much money, but they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do to be able to solidify with maybe looking for guys that have less injuries throughout their histories.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're going to be looking at guys who have had great careers at the end of their careers, maybe on one-year deals, bring them in to kind of fill in certain spots. That's where they're going to be at. They're probably going to be back in the mix of things next season. As long as they have a very healthy offseason, the Niners will be a contender again next season. It's not like some of these teams that just missed the playoffs where you're like, where do these teams stand? Like the Niners, yes, they missed the playoffs, but they're going to be relevant for the next 3 to 4 years at least.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, I think that that's a really good point too. And I think that the organization, regardless of where you're picked, even sometimes one, two, three, you're not a sure thing to get $100+ million until you establish yourself, until you utilize that team's resources, you play the games with that team. I think that it would be totally different if Ayuk was a free agent on his own. I think if you're a free agent, you're not tied to a team. I think that you have every right to explore everything, and you still have the right to do what he did. Clearly, he did, and it worked for him. But now is that going to be the end of your career? Are you happy just having the money? I mean, I would hope that a lot of people that are getting paid this look at it as something to drive them forward. I mean, I think it's very different seeing the attitude of CeeDee Lamb after the contract and Brandon Ayuk. I feel like Brandon Ayuk seemed out of shape, seemed out of sorts. CeeDee Lamb was ready to go. He just felt like he was, and mind you, CeeDee Lamb was the number one player in fantasy last year, which obviously that's not real life, but that shows you the numbers were there and that he deserves to be paid like a top receiver.
Sure.
And
I mean, yeah,
that
CeeDee Lamb is a different category, I feel like, compared to Brandon Ayuk. Like, you look at guys, even like Jamar Chase, right? He had that type of similar scenario too. But who was the best wide receiver in football this season? Jamar Chase.
without a doubt.
Right? So CeeDee Lamb is, I feel like, that similar category to like Jamar Chase, where they're just like that elite receiver where, as much as it hurts to not have the deal done as soon as possible, it's less likely to affect you. Although he didn't have as great of a season, but he still put up pretty good numbers. But you compare it to like something like Ayuk, where that was a disaster for everyone involved, right? Maybe not for Ayuk. He's like, I got paid, screw it, I don't care. But for the Niners, they're like, we've given this guy $120 million. And now, fast forward a year into the contract, we still have him for 3 more years. What do we have out of Brandon Ayuk? What is he going to give us in 2025 and going forward that's going to be productive to this team's offense? And they're going to have to really evaluate that in this offseason. I mean, I could see Brandon Ayuk being in trade rumors. There will be a market for him. There will be teams out there who could say, we need a wide receiver. He would be a number 1 wide receiver on some of these teams out there, hitting the trade market, entering 2025. So there's a lot to uncover. And I think the Niners are going to be really digging and trying to figure out what makes the most sense for their organization. They're a great organization. Shanahan's job is not in jeopardy, and nobody's talking about it. But I'm just clarifying the fact is that organization is still heading in the right direction. And, give it within the next 4 years, they will have a Super Bowl representing San Francisco, a 6th one that they desperately are looking to get back.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, Brandon Ayuk was not a free agent until after 2026. So he was under contract. He, at the time of being drafted, agreed to play for this team for this amount of time. And I just feel like it was a very interesting move. And I think that his injury might make it so it doesn't happen again for people who try to pull it again. But you never know. I think the organizations kind of need to put their foot down. And it doesn't mean don't pay the guys. Like Jamar Chase was making $21 million this year, and he says I'm unguardable. He says I'm always open, and I'm gonna put up historic numbers. And
It's not wrong.
people try to say, 100%, and people try to say, oh, he has Joe Burrow. So what? if you get drafted to a team that has one of the best quarterbacks in the league, that's the team investing in their team. That's not your fault.
True
And
that.
he's going to get more now than he would have gotten. And I think there definitely will be a trade market for Ayuk with those 2 years between like next year and the year after, where
Sure.
he's playing for a couple $1,000,000 compared to later in his contract. That I think that they might look at that because they look at it as a guy who, when we really needed him, they didn't have our back, and it sucks. And you, as a fan, I don't know if that's really a guy I could get behind, but sometimes you got to do what's right for your family, and if sometimes your agent leads you away, sometimes you have an inkling to do something a certain way, but whatever it is,
There's a
I
lot of
think that
opinions that are floating around you when you're making these
exactly.
decisions. It's not just you, it's your family, it's your friends, it's your agent, it's your lawyer, accountant, all these things that are going into the mix of things, and then you're somehow supposed to make this decision. It's not easy for these players. They're getting
Yeah.
thrown a lot of money. It's life-changing money, and they're trying to figure out what's the best for them to be able to, either take that deal or go find another option elsewhere. But
And now I bet they were sorry. Now I bet they wish they front loaded that deal because they got covered by insurance.
Oh, they would have probably have loved that. I think the truth is they probably would have been better off not signing Brandon Ayuk looking back now and
Oh, for
just
sure.
not having that presence. They still would have had a great receiving group. Obviously, CMC, this is pre-knowing of his injury status, and just go from there. And then at least, not have to have that umbrella over this franchise, just kind of dwelling over what is Ayuk going to be doing on a weekly basis. Is he going to be producing? Is he going to be healthy? What is his status? And now you have this big cloud over your head regarding one of your highest paid offensive players. And they're going to have a lot to discover in this offseason. But let's not just talk about these 49ers because we can go on about them, a
Yeah.
franchise that should have made the playoffs but didn't. Who's got some bright futures? I mean, there's some teams that really took off. The Denver Broncos, they definitely have their quarterback in Bo Nix. Atlanta
Sure.
didn't make the playoffs. But for them, I think they definitely know that they have the right guy in Michael Penix. So some of these teams and some of these players, really, they do have some bright futures. We have some coaching changes that are happening as well. Obviously, a few coaches have been let go. Some have been retained. So what does this mean for certain players that are also coming out of the draft? I mean, we have a lot that's going to be happening this offseason, and we're going to bring it to everyone that is watching so that they can be as well known and versed when it comes to NFL offseason. But, I mean, there's a lot of things that will be happening. Doug Peterson was obviously fired in Jacksonville. Brian Daboll was retained in New York, and they have certain pieces that, like for instance in Jacksonville, Brian Thomas, fantastic player. He had a great career, a great season, probably the best receiver based on just the numbers. And then the same thing in New York, Malik Neighbors, another great receiver, but both teams need a quarterback, or at least one of them needs a quarterback, and the other one needs to figure out what they're doing with their current quarterback. So there's a lot of things that are good and bad happening throughout the NFL. What's something that's really captivated you so far?
Well, before I get into that, isn't Trevor Lawrence the highest paid player in the league right now?
I think he was, and then Dak Prescott surpassed him.
But still, I don't think they're going to be doing too much in the QB market with a top two quarterback cap hit hanging over their head for a bunch of years. But I mean, obviously, I'm happy that the Saints moved on from Dennis Allen earlier on. I think that they're interviewing Aaron Glenn. They're
What does your
interviewing
quarterback situation looking like? Is Derek Carr done, or is it Spencer Rattler time in New Orleans?
I think they got to bring someone in to compete with Spencer Rattler because I think he needs a little more time to season if he even is the guy. I think I'd be very surprised if Derek Carr was back in terms of a number of things, but I also wouldn't be surprised because I think the cap hit and I don't know. It's a very confusing situation because he was interviewed and they asked him if he would take a pay cut, and he said based on the numbers I've earned the salary, yada yada yada, which is fair, I suppose. But then you're probably not going to have a job sooner than later. So I think that they might run it back one more year with that. I think that they need to get a real receiving tight end, but it's not even at the top of the draft list. They need to sign someone that has experience catching touchdowns to go alongside Jawan Johnson because he's good, but I feel like half the time he's either not playing or not productive.
Right. I think Jawan Johnson's actually a very good tight end. I just think that
Yeah.
it was a year where a lot of inconsistency in the quarterback play had a lot to say about what happened for the Saints offensively. But that NFC South has two teams that are really trying to figure out what are they going to do with these quarterbacks that they paid, not only the Saints, but the Falcons as well, and Kirk Cousins. And I actually
Yeah.
asked somebody about this. I said, who's more likely to be gone from their team? Kirk Cousins in Atlanta or Derek Carr in New Orleans? And he said Derek Carr as well. Although I was under the impression that, because I would have said Kirk Cousins because the Vikings, the Falcons are sure about who their backup is, right? They have Michael Penix. They're totally fine not rocking Kirk Cousins and just rocking out with Michael Penix versus the Saints, where I feel like Derek Carr didn't play as bad as Kirk did either. It was just more unfortunate scenarios and circumstances for him. Then you insert Spencer Rattler, and there was a lot of positivity in Spencer Rattler's game, but like you said, there still needs to be a development stage for him to get to the next level. And, that's the reason why I would have said it makes more sense for the Saints to just run it back one more year, at least with Derek Carr. The truth is, though, what I will say is that this is going to be a very interesting offseason for all the teams that need a quarterback, right? Because this draft class is not very heavy quarterback. You have Shador and Cam Ward, and then other than that, it's really a mixed bag. And some of these teams that aren't going to be able to get a quarterback or maybe not love number one and number two could be out looking for a trade for one of these quarterbacks so long as, the current team takes on a majority of that salary, similar to what happened with Russell Wilson. It's an option with guys like Kirk. It's an option with guys like Derek Carr and potentially even J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold, depending on what the Vikings end up wanting to do at their quarterback position. We'll see that. Maybe even Geno Smith in Seattle. So there's going to be a lot of free agent or at least quarterbacks that will be available via trade that are probably better suited to take you through at least one season without having to commit to a drafted quarterback. And so I think, like, for instance, for me and the Giants, I would be open to looking at guys like J.J. McCarthy, young, who hasn't played yet. If you could make a deal for him, great. Or even, like, Derek Carr. I wouldn't think it's, like, a terrible one-year stopgap quarterback. Then you can decide if, next season, do you still need a quarterback, which they probably would. Derek Carr wouldn't be the long-term picture for the Giants. But you could run it with someone like Derek Carr or even like a guy like Kirk Cousins when Shador and Cam Ward, they have a ton of potential, but you don't really know what you're getting out of them, and they have the third pick. And so if they can get Travis Hunter, I would say go get a quarterback via trade or free agency and go draft Travis Hunter. I think that's the best formula for the Giants, but I don't want to get too much.
I'm surprised you didn't bring up your boy Sam Darnold to New York.
I think it's more likely that the Vikings will trade JJ because when you've already seen what Sam Darnold has done this season, it's hard to just say, like, we're going to just start over with a new quarterback. Like, yes, you drafted JJ top 10 and you have the world's respect for the kid and believe that he could run any franchise. But when Sam Darnold comes in here and he did what he did, and mind you, there were some games where he didn't play so well, even week 18, that was a rough game against Detroit. But I think what happens in the playoffs is really going to determine what Sam Darnold's future is going to look like, whether it's going to be in Minnesota or elsewhere. So if they're one game bounce out of the playoffs, then more likelihood Sam Darnold will be the guy that they're going to end up moving on from, and they'll just keep J.J. McCarthy. But we'll see. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Sam Darnold will win at least one playoff game and at least prove to the Vikings, like, hey, listen, like, I can do this. Pay me and let's rock and roll because I've done this for a full year and we were amazing and nobody expected us to be this good. Nobody thought the Vikings were a playoff team except for the people in Minnesota. And look where they're at now. They're laughing at everybody because they had a phenomenal season and in 6 out of 8 divisions they would have won. And they just unfortunately were in the NFC North where the Lions won. And, this is where they're at. But I think there's going to be some moving parts and it depends on excuse me. It also depends on who's coaching these teams. What is the coaching scenario going to be like? There was one thing that was brought up that I kind of like to discuss too really quickly was the 3 job openings for quarterback are Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence, Chicago with Caleb Williams, and New England with Drake May. Let me ask you, Josh, which one of those 3 is as a head coach would I like to go to and coach? What team seems like it's the most likely to be as successful as soon as possible?
Strictly just the quarterback, not the parts around it, or
everything. I mean, you're the head coach, and you have an interview with 3 of those teams: the Bears, the Patriots, and the Jaguars. You have an opportunity they're all offering you a job. Which team do you pick? Considering every aspect.
Yeah, I'd probably honestly think I would probably look at the Patriots, which is kind of a wild one because I feel like a lot of people would look at Caleb and pick that. But for me, I'm really a big Drake May guy. I think that there's a lot of room to be able to build the team that I really want. I mean, they got $133 million in cap space. They can really build it up, and they could bring in a couple receivers. They could bring or just build up the defense and kind of make the offense work its way along. Draft a receiver. They got Jalen Polk in the draft last year. For me, I like.
You want to hear a
But
fun
I like.
stat about
I'm a
Jalen Polk
builder.
real quick? I know you just brought up his name, so I got to just drop this
Sure.
real quick. Among all receivers who qualified, he had the lowest separation distance among defensive backs.
Yeah, so that's a red flag. But that I'm not saying he's the. I'm not saying he's the.
He's definitely not wide receiver one category, but you can grow in the NFL. We're not. Listen, I thought Jalen Polk was going to have a better season than he did, but going back to what you were saying, I'm listening about the Patriots and
For
Drake
sure.
May.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it also that there's no one else they really need to worry about. So you probably have a lot of elite cornerbacks covering him. I mean, what is there? Kendrick Bourne, maybe Demario Douglas. Like these aren't guys that are Demario Douglas will just chill in the slot, so he's not really going to get the elite corners. And then
Yeah,
Kendrick Bourne, he's not really going to scare anybody. So
sure.
you could look at that in one of two ways where either it's I didn't watch all the Patriots games, so I can't comment on it. But if he was someone that was getting experience against better backs, that's a plus. If it's someone that is getting all different levels of coverage and just not being able to catch up to the league, then that second year is really important for him. But I think there's a lot of room to be able to build it up the way I want to. But I think that having Trevor Lawrence gives you a lot of inflexibility in terms of what you are able to do to build out the organization because their cap space, if they didn't have him, I think his cap hits over 40. So I think their cap space is at 43. So I think that the quarterback position is taken care of in terms of that, but you don't know if he's going to project to just have 1 year of injury and come back, or if that's going to be what it is. But I don't know.
I
I feel
think
like Chicago's very interesting. But my order would probably go New England, Chicago, and then Jacksonville. But it's tough because if they didn't have Trevor Lawrence, I think that Sam Darnold with Thomas would be a perfect fit in Jacksonville. But
ooh.
there's no way they're gonna move on from. I mean, I guess if someone takes him on, maybe the Raiders would trade for Trevor Lawrence or something. Who knows?
Ooh, that's quite interesting take you had there. But I would, the way I go, I'm going to rank it, then kind of give you mine. I go Patriots 1, I go Jacksonville number 2, I go Bears number 3. And I
Mhm.
think Patriots by a long shot because of the cap scenario that they're in. They also are drafting at 4 too. So
We didn't discuss this before, by the way.
we have Drake May, right? And the 4th overall pick. And so ESPN reported they had $95 million. I saw somewhere that it was also closer to $130 million. But regardless,
Mhm.
they have the most money in terms of cap space heading into this offseason.
Yeah.
So combine all those things as a head coach, that's enticing. I love Drake May. I think he's going to be a superstar. I think he's got skills to be similar to like a Drew Brees. And so with that, I think that's the best case scenario for a head coach. Number 2, I like
Yeah.
Jacksonville because I think Brian Thomas is a stellar specimen of a receiver. I think there's still a lot more to discover with Trevor Lawrence as well. And I think if you can get a real head coach that can really unlock the tools that Trevor Lawrence is more than capable of doing that we've seen at the collegiate level and at times in the NFL, then you'll have a lethal combination over there in Jacksonville. They are a couple of pieces. I feel like they are less pieces away from being better than the Bears, and that's why I would take them over the Bears. I think with Caleb Williams, I think what I want to say is that he's got all the talent in the world to be a phenomenal quarterback, but the way this season went really soured me a little bit in the sense that I saw him play some horrific football. I mean, with the amount of hype he had, you can compare that type of season that he had. And I know the numbers might look better than they actually were,
Yeah.
but Bryce Young last season in Carolina had a pretty bad season. And
Mhm.
he didn't have nearly as much hype. And yes, he was the first overall pick, but he wasn't nearly as hyped up as Caleb was this season. And the fact that Caleb went as bad as he did with the amount of receivers and options that he had, considering DeAndre Swift
Yeah.
was your running back, and Keenan Allen and Roma Dunze and DJ Moore. And I mean, like, what else could you ask for as a quarterback?
Seriously.
And miss as badly as he was missing, I feel like there still needs to be a lot of development there, and it might be a couple of years versus, Caleb being out there next season and just rocking and rolling with these Bears and having a new coach just figure it out for him and taking them to the promised land. So that's why I would go Pats, Jags, Bears. Now, I'm not saying the Bears' job is not an enticing one. It's a very enticing one, but we're comparing them between those three. That's the way I would go, and I think we're pretty similar and on par with where our mindset's at with that. But we got a beautiful, beautiful postseason coming up, and then once the postseason ends, we're going to have an amazing offseason, and we're going to bring you guys everything in regards to what is happening major in the NFL world, because this sport, whenever something happens major, we know that it needs to be uncovered because there's a lot of details that aren't really talked about on some of these takes. So we want to bring you guys every single major case that does happen in the NFL. It is America's sport at this point, so we gotta at least uncover every single rock when it comes to the NFL. But my brother, we gotta shift. We gotta shift from the NFL. We gotta go into the NBA because we only have a few more minutes over here, and we gotta wrap up with this key matchup that's about to start as soon as we get off this podcast.
Finals preview.
Man, oh man. We've been talking about this for years, if our teams could make it. We had one opportunity so close in 2017, 2016. We were one game short of that. But now it seems like it is a crash course for the Cavaliers and the Thunder to play in the finals. And we are getting the first match in the regular season tonight, 7 o'clock at ESPN. It is going to be a fun game to watch. These two teams are playing basketball at the right way. They're playing smart. They are playing with energy. They're playing with a sense of, team instead of individual, which really speaks volumes. And what I'm seeing here is these two teams are just running through their conferences and are just getting ready to meet in the NBA Finals. We're getting a little taste test tonight. We're also going to get a second taste test next week on the 16th when they're going to be going to OKC and playing Game 2 in OKC. Tonight we'll be in Cleveland.
Until the finals.
But man, oh man, they're not going to be playing until the finals, and we're going to be there. We're going to be there for those finals. When our teams are there, it's so beautiful when we see good basketball. I love basketball. And when you see right basketball, the way it's supposed to be played on both ends of the court, it is magical. Team chemistry is super important. And both of these teams are amazing at team chemistry. They love each other. They love playing with each other. Cavs are the best team offensively. Thunder are the best team defensively. Thunder are a fantastic team offensively. Cavs are a fantastic team defensively. This is going to be an incredible matchup. And our two best players, D. Mitch, SGA, guess what? I don't even think they're going to be the stars of the show. I wouldn't be surprised if those guys combine for like 20 points and we see Jalen Williams for the Thunder going off and Evan Mobley for the Cavs going off and really just doing their things. It's going to be so much fun. I'm so excited. I want to get out of the studio. I want to put my TV on. I want to watch this game and then bring you guys the recap next week, even though it's going to be a week old, but we're going to have to talk about how amazing of a game this is. And then probably next week on our next episode, we'll be able to talk about Game 2, which is going to be on the 16th.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think there's a lot of things to be really excited about with the Thunder and the Cavs. I mean, the Thunder have won 15 games in a row, and Chet Holmgren hasn't played in 25. So, I mean, you really look at it that the Thunder might still have another gear, which I'm not really sure where it would go. Maybe a little more to the offense, but Chet would definitely help in a matchup like this against the two bigs. I would call them the Twin Towers, but I don't think that's politically correct. So we'll just call them Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen.
I don't think there's ever a right time to call anybody the Twin Towers, especially with both of us being from New York.
Well, I think that's why we might get a pass. Like if it associates you, sometimes people let you go. But either way, I think that tonight you're gonna see the Aaron Wiggins show. You're gonna see a Cavs player that I'm not gonna expect to have 15, 16 points. I think that it's going to be hard fought. We were talking smack before, but I think that we both have nothing but respect for the team on the other side. And I think that when you really look at it, they're both playing clean. They're both playing the right way. They're playing the way it should be taught. They're playing, I mean, we have the league MVP, but you guys have the best offense. So it's so interesting to see how those styles clash and how with those bigs, how iHeart and I mean, Jay Will has been getting a couple minutes, but like there's no comparison between Jay Will and Evan Mobley, or if J Dub is gonna have to try and keep Evan Mobley in check. J Dub, I've got a lot of flack for it before, but I need to make it clear that when I say that the upside and the talent level are not there, I think that like if you took LeBron and looked at like the closest player, not in terms of skill level, but in terms of being so multifaceted and well-rounded, I think that that's J Dub. And I think that
This
when you
guy just
look at
compared J Dub and LeBron James. Oh my goodness
the
gracious.
see, but like it's not that I think J Dub is gonna ever be the MVP or J Dub is gonna be that guy, but just in terms of I wouldn't be surprised if he watched LeBron growing up and looked at every facet of his game and tried to be great at it. And obviously there's no comparing him to the GOAT. I'm not doing that in terms of saying that he's near as good as him, but just I can you tell me a player as multifaceted, even if it's not at the same level as LeBron,
I would have said
as J Dub?
it's different age group, but I would have said Jimmy Butler. I love Jimmy Butler, but he's also 35 years old. Jalen Williams is a phenomenal player, and I understand what you're saying. I'm not. I was just, I gotta. If you're gonna put
We're having
somebody
fun
next
here.
to
We're having fun
LeBron's
here.
name, I'm gonna have to say that's a fucking crazy thing to say. But yes, I understand what you're
There's no
saying
one.
when Jalen Williams, is a guy who puts up like 18, 5, and 5, and he does it all, and he hustles on the defensive end. We're talking about prime LeBron version because we know LeBron doesn't really play much defense unless he has to in the most critical moments today. But
Yeah.
Jalen Williams is a phenomenal player, and he facilitates the ball really well. And you could see, the games that I've watched for the Thunder, the team trusts him to be able to get it done. If it's not
Yeah.
SGA, Jalen Williams is your man over there. He is a phenomenal player
Mhm.
because Chet still needs a couple of years, and Chet is a phenomenal player too. I love a lot of these Thunder players, but Chet is there. But I think in terms of where the team is, I go SGA, Jalen, Chet in terms of the
Yeah.
category tier level right now, but that doesn't mean I think Chet.
Position's a factor.
I think
The
I
position's
think
definitely a
Chet could
factor with what
easily
you're saying.
pass Jalen Williams over the next couple of years, depending on where his game grows and where he's at in a couple of years. But this is going to be a tale of two teams that are just playing the best basketball, and the analytics are proving it. These two teams are playing smart. They're playing clean basketball, and they're playing with a sense of like, listen, you want to rule us out because we're not a big market team? Fine. We're just going to go out and win every single team and beat everybody badly. And it's not even like we're talking about close games here. We destroy, like, when I say we, I mean our teams destroy everyone in their path. Like, it is not close. Even the games that
like
end
what's
7,
the-
8 points, like our teams held the momentum and the tempo of the game for the majority of it and lock in a win. And so 15 games for the Thunder, they've won in a row. The Cavs have won 10 games in a row. It's the first time in NBA history that both division leaders are on winning streaks this large and are going to be facing off at this point in the season. It is a historic matchup, and this one will be in the books. I mean, I think people will be talking about this game, and hopefully your team has more recognition than mine does because I don't know why, but we're both small market teams, so both our teams
I think
have.
it's because we got the MVP. I think people gravitate towards when there's an MVP.
You know what? And that's
but
that's why all these GMs and all these people who think that the Cavs are, they're a great team, but they're not like one of these historic dynasty teams. Like, they don't know. A GM in the NBA, you could be anybody. You could be a janitor in a school one day and be a GM the next day and running an organization. I swear to God, because these guys, the things that they say, they're like, oh, they're not there. They're not an unbeatable team. It's like, your team lost to them by 27 points, and you're in second in the conference. What are you talking about?
see, but
You got
I find
ruined.
it to be I find it to be I don't know how I want to word it, but I actually disagree with you. The fact that there's no like star like that where it's the MVP, quote unquote, in terms of obviously there's still a lot of season left.
Donovan
But
Mitchell's an
I
MVP
think
caliber player too. Just because he's not
but
unanimous, I mean, that's like saying if SGA is, then Jason Tatum and all these other guys are irrelevant because SGA already won it in the bag. Donovan Mitchell's
no,
an
that's
MVP
not
caliber player.
what I mean. What I'm saying is I think that the fact that it's a system that has all of the right players who all like each other, who all like playing together, and who are all damn good at
What
basketball.
team are you
I think
talking
that
about? I'm confused.
the Cavs,
Oh,
because I think you're
I was saying that
that
you were talking about the same team because both our teams
I
are
mean
like that.
either could work, but what I'm saying is that having a team like that where everyone's bought in, everyone's doing it for the right reason, everyone's trying to win a championship, and everyone believes that it's possible. I think that that makes it even more likely to be able to be a dynasty because the players really
Hey,
want to be there.
Timmy! Timmy, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard enough. Where's that guy? Remember we quoted him? Timmy! Timmy! Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard enough. I will reiterate that till the day I die because I don't care what superstars you have. Your talent is not nearly as important as hard work. It's the truth. We know this. And SGA and the Thunder are rocking and rolling, and they're a phenomenal team. But some of these teams that have MVP caliber players are nowhere near the Cavs in terms of what they're doing this season and this season alone. Because this team has played together for 3 years together collectively. They know everything about each other. Donovan Mitchell knows exactly where Sam Merrill is going to be and where Darius Garland and Isaac Okoro is going to be to make the right pass. Evan Mobley knows what's the best opportunity to take the best shot. These guys have played together for so long that it makes them even more lethal because of the chemistry level that they have and the hard work that they're putting in. Forget about Evan Mobley and where he's gone this season, rising as the type of player he has. How about Darius Garland? This man, with all the adversity he went through last season, breaking his jaw, getting poked in the eye, missing 30 games of the season, and not really being sure where he stands because he lost so much weight, and the team was heading in Donovan Mitchell's favor, and it was like this really weird scenario for him. He is balling, man, and I got to give him so much credit because he is putting up 50, 40, 90 numbers while putting up 21, 7, and 3 rebounds a game. People need to give credit for some of these guys and say, listen, Darius Garland is a surefire all-star in my opinion. If he's not, it's a snub like nobody else's business because he is playing like the best point guard in the East right now. In the East, hands down. That's all I got to say. Both teams are phenomenal. SGA is the best player among both teams, hands down. I'm not even denying that. But Donovan Mitchell is an MVP caliber player. He's not going to win it, but he'll get votes. Top 3 votes because of how amazing he is and the team is and what he's done. Donovan Mitchell's playing 3.5 less minutes per game this season because he's not required to be out there in garbage time in the fourth quarter when they're winning by 25 points. The starting lineup for the Cavs are playing 30 minutes per game, and Donovan Mitchell's playing 32. It's incredible.
You guys kind of remind me of the really good Warriors. I mean, obviously Donovan Mitchell's not Stephen Curry, but
that's what the GMs were saying. They're saying we're not that team. We're not even close to like a team like that. And it's like, all right, well, when we're 73-9 at the end of the season and we're in the finals with the OKC Thunder, you all should be shutting up because the truth is we are that good. The Cavaliers are a phenomenal team. They're playing the best basketball I've seen. Even, and I'm saying this, you know how much of a take this is. This team is better. They're playing better than the team that won the finals in 2016 with LeBron and Kyrie. All day, every day. This team is playing better basketball. I'm not saying they're going to win it all, but I'm saying they're playing better basketball now than they ever were. Best team for the Cavaliers, historically speaking, and I'm excited to go. It's almost 7 o'clock now, so we got to wrap it up. I'm going to let you finish up your last few takes, and then we'll kind of wrap up, and we'll go home and watch this amazing game.
Yeah, I mean, I want to watch this game too, but when it comes down to it, when the record, it's not like there are 7 or 8 teams that are at 30 wins. Like the Thunder have 30, the Cavs have 31, and the Celtics are next with 27, but they also have 10 losses. So to be 31-4, 30-5, I think that just speaks to everything that we're talking about. And I think that while you could try and push the bigger markets, and the Wembanyama is a great player, but the Spurs are just not that team when the Thunder are doing it and the Cavs are doing it. It's really great for the game because then you watch the big brands and they sell the tickets and they put on a flashy game. They might not lose, but no one cares because they went to a Lakers game. But then you see the Cavs and the Thunder. The Cavs remind me of that Warriors team, and the Thunder remind me of an insane like college team that just you come into their gym and the gym is going wild and people are throwing the ball into the stands and missing easy shots. It's fun. And you can catch us on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube, and go Thunder.
Love it, baby. Love it. It's going to be a fun one. Go Cavs. Whatever Josh just said in terms of the YouTube and the Spotify, go there. Go to the comment section on Instagram, on our post. Comment away. Let us know who you guys think is going to take this game tonight. Let us know any questions you guys have. If we're crazy, if you're like, Harry, your Cavs suck, and like, I don't know what you're talking about. I know Jay Cluck will not be disagreeing with me. Our team is rocking and rolling, my man. Let's go, baby. Let's go, Cavs. And from our homes to you guys, I hope everyone has a fantastic 2025. And thank you guys so much for tuning in to Beyond the Score podcast. We will see you guys next week.
Bye.